The Boston City Council is considering new measures to give renters in Boston some protection from displacement. Known as the Jim Brooks Stabilization Act, the home rule petition would specify just cause for evictions. It would also require notification to the city, which could also help tenants exercise their legal rights. Our guest is one of the supporters of the measure, an organizer with City Life Vida Urbana, Ronel. Remy, thank you very much for being with us, Ronel.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Ronel, I want to have you talk about the people you're trying to help with this measure. And I guess what you're really concentrating on right now at City Life Vida Urbana are people who live in these larger developments, probably, investor-owned, and they're worried about their rents going way up.
Oh, of course. And they're right to worry about that. If you look around, there is something called gentrification, and most folks don't know about it. It's a big term, but those who have a lot, those big corporations, they come in the inner city, they invest, they have brand new apartments that folks who live there cannot afford. Therefore, everyone who were there before have to raise their rent also to match up with what's going on. And therefore, the communities, we're being pushed away. Folks can't live. Folks who have Section 8, they see they rent acts for over $300, $400, $500, $800, elderlies, folks who are retired, they're going through that.
Talk about that, Ronel, because at one time in this town, if you had a Section 8 subsidy from the federal government, you were pretty much home, not totally free, but it was a very secure arrangement. And you're telling me now in places even like Hyde Park, a Section 8 person might have to move?
Of course, and it's done in such a way, but there should be an increase every year, for those folks who own those buildings. But it should be a standard fixed by the city. Even that, they don't respect anymore. They go bypass that in order to push these folks out. Or something that a lot of us don't know, when you're not educated enough, when you see those letters saying by a certain time you have to sign this or move out, most people do just that. They just move out. They don't know they have rights. And this is where we come. We tell them they should not be afraid to confront these people. They should get organized, and know what's going on and to preserve their community.
Well, ultimately, even if this measure passes, if a landlord wants to raise a rent, let's say from $1,000 a month to $2,200, eventually they're going to be able to do that. So how does this help a tenant who's faced with something like that?
Okay, a tenant who fix something like this should get organized. Just the fact, for some folks, if the landlord don't like you, that's ground for them to evict you. They could find everything wrong with you to evict you. But by law, they could raise the rent 3% only. And especially when you get organized, when you get all others who live in that same situation with you, that gives more weight, to what you demand of them.
So you said they can only raise it 3%?
A year.
That sounds like rent control, isn't it?
It's not rent control, but those are the existing law that says that's the way they should go. But many landlords don't go that way. For a small landlord, who has a tenant, they want to keep that tenant, especially if it's somebody who pay on time, who don't give them headaches. They want to keep that tenant for 4, 5, 6, 10 years even. But for those big corporations, it's all about the money. They don't want you to live in the neighborhood too long. They want to raise the price as far as they can go. And when you can't afford it anymore, when you move out, those who replace you will pay that and more. So it's a business.
Now, one of the things I understand from this law is that if you live in the city of Boston and you own fewer than 7 units of housing, this doesn't even apply to you.
It doesn't affect you. No, it doesn't affect the small lenders, the small landlords. It doesn't affect the condo owners also. Those folks, most likely if you live that way, if you have enough, you want to keep it going. You want the city to have what we call diversity. But when the folks, they already can afford the cost of living, and you're raising their rent, what do you want them to do? Move away, and then what?
This is BNN News. We're talking with Ronel Remy from City Life Vida Urbana. Ronel, one other thing that would be interesting to think about with this law is that if you have just cause for eviction, and it does sound reasonable, you have to give a reason to evict someone. The owners groups, they say, well, it takes so long to prove a just cause. It could take several months. And a lot of investors, they may say, well, I'm not going to bother to buy that big building that needs some work because I don't want these headaches.
Well, a lot of them, they feel that way. But the conversation is not around that. It's basically control to push folks around, to push them over. As an example, for my case, when I first moved to Massachusetts, I lived at first in Somerville. And then I moved to Dorchester and Hyde Park and Rosendale and Randolph and now Brockton. And I thought I just moved to those neighborhoods because I could afford the cost of living there. But it was all by design, you know, because everywhere you go, you just get enough time to breathe and then it's going to go higher. Then it's going to go higher. That's how it's going. But for someone who lives in the city, if you pay your rent on time, if you obey the law, you don't give trouble, you know, you're not on drugs, you're not destroying the property, there should not be a case against you once you want to pay. But if you're doing all these things against the law, then that's just cause they can evict you.
Of course, there's another consideration here is that the people who are threatened with displacement, you know, a lot of them work, maybe most of them work, and where are those jobs?
Well, what's going on? You live in the city, you live in the community, but you got to work outside of the community. And imagine when you're coming home. Also, another thing that we find is by design, you don't have enough money already to live where you live at, you know, to sustain the neighborhood. But it's so addictive, you know. Everything in the neighborhood is meant to keep you on check, you know. Like if you go, you see mostly liquor store, you see those big corporations, you know, who sell food that's not healthy for the community. Basically, you are always under pressure, you know, to make it. That paycheck may not make it home with you because there's so many distractions, you know, around you.
City Life Vida Urbana recently held an event in Hyde Park about a building that you're trying to organize. And what's your sense of how the neighborhood's changing? APM
they are very big in Hyde Park.
These are the people who own the building.
Yes, right? Yes. And what they do now, they're not negotiating with anybody. They just keep climbing the rent. I know a gentleman who live in 430 River Street, and he is disabled. They already raise his rent over $400. He can't pay that. He has Section 8, and he cannot work anymore. How is going to produce that extra money? Where the income is going to come from? So now what they're trying to tell them, well, if you can't pay it, you can move. The state will help you. Then when they do that, you know, they put more pressure on the state to provide. How much money do we have already? We can be wasteful. But what they're doing, really, they're milking it until this cow can't produce milk anymore.
Ronel, there's going to be a hearing on this Jim Brooks Stabilization Act at the City Council pretty soon.
Yes.
Talk about that and what people should do.
And that's when we invite everybody to come downtown, go to City Hall, flood City Hall. If you got to work, if you can't make it, it's okay. Then make a phone call, you know. Call these people to let them know what you want to see happening in your city. We are a big community, and we need to have laws to protect us against for those folks who are not willing to share the wealth. And this is what we're going through right now.
I understand this hearing is going to be on Monday?
On Monday, yeah. And we suggest if you could go by 9 o'clock, you could have a good seat, but it's going to start at 10 o'clock. And I'm planning on being there by 9 something. I don't want to miss that. That's history in the making.
I'm sure it is. You've certainly convinced me. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Ronel, Remy. In a moment, we'll hear about the city's plan for school buildings and a response from a group of parent advocates.